Since 2009, the Defense Department has enrolled more than 10,000 foreign-born individuals into the U.S. Armed Forces under a program called Military Accessions Vital to the National Interest, or MAVNI. In exchange for service, the foreigners, selected for language or other needed skills, can receive an expedited path to U.S. citizenship.
The Bush administration started the program to help fight the war on terror. President Obama opened it up to DACA recipients, the so-called Dreamers, and that brought tougher screenings for recruits in 2016.
Immigrants have had a long history in the U.S. military, spanning back to the Revolutionary War. Under the little-known military recruitment program called MAVNI, thousands of foreign-born soldiers with high educational credentials and special skills have brought their expertise to the armed forces over 10 years. Some notable MAVNI soldiers include a U.S. Olympic silver medalist and the U.S. Army's 2012 Soldier of the Year. Attorney Margaret Stock spearheaded the development of the MAVNI program. Stock saw MAVNI as a solution for the military's need for more skilled soldiers and the difficulty non-citizens faced in enlisting.
So we wouldn't have had to create a special recruiting program 100 years ago because anybody who was in the United States could get a green card pretty easily, and so they could join the military. They didn't need a special recruiting program in order to join. But in recent years, the U.S. legal immigration system has become so broken and convoluted that it's very difficult for people to get a green card. If you have a green card, you can join the military. You're allowed by law to join the military. If you don't have a green card, you're not allowed to join the military. Today, there's millions of people living in the United States who can't get green cards. They're just barred either permanently from getting a green card or they have no way to qualify for one. And those people can't join the military. Even if they're highly qualified and interested in joining, they're just barred from joining because they can't get that green card.
MAVNI initially allows certain legal immigrants to enlist in the military and later opened to DACA recipients. Questions arose about the purpose of MAVNI. Mark Krikorian heads the Center for Immigration Studies, a think tank with a low immigration, pro-immigrant vision.
The concept itself is perfectly legitimate. The question is, was it used, was it applied too broadly? You know, where do they set the bar for how unique or needed the skills that the person brought was? At the same time that MAVNI was created, there was all kinds of discussion about using military service as a way of increasing immigration. Stock's comments reinforced the idea that there was a broader agenda behind MAVNI. In other words, that she saw it as a way of prying open the immigration system further rather than a specific targeted measure that was designed to meet specific needs.
The Pentagon had to walk a fine line in between balancing national security concerns and meeting the military's needs for specialized skills. The Defense Department froze MAVNI in 2016, citing security concerns, and imposed strict new screening on thousands of recruits. The Army flagged many of them as security risks, even when other federal agencies had cleared them for more sensitive jobs in the civilian world. Some recruits were flagged for ordinary aspects of immigrant life, like sending money or calling family overseas. The order to implement new screenings overwhelmed the Army's resources, and thousands of MAVNI recruits were left in limbo as the backlog of reviews piled up.
We're now in a situation where some people signed 8-year contracts, and the background checks that they need in order to perform their service are taking more than 4 years to complete. So they're going to finish their contract, more than half their contract, without having any of these background checks completed. The government's not putting any resources into completing them. So it's just a very odd situation where they said publicly that they needed to do these background checks and they were really important for national security, but they're just not finishing them. And that tells me that they don't really think they're important, because if they were important, they would finish them.
You know, I'm sympathetic to anybody in limbo. I mean, you know, you get tied up in red tape, whatever it is, whether it's the DMV or the Immigration Service, it's always unfortunate. I don't have any specific prescriptions for what should be done or how they should deal with this. I mean, there's a good reason that we have put the brakes in this program, a big part of it being security concerns. These people are completely foreigners. In other words, they're not legal residents. They're just here as visitors, in effect. They're students, longer-term visitors. But I mean, I was a visitor in the Soviet Union back in the 80s when I was a student for 2 years. I had no commitment to the Soviet Union, obviously. So these security concerns are legitimate here. It's not like we're just letting them in and they're going to go get a job at a florist shop. I mean, we're letting them into the military. So there's a good reason for heightened vetting and heightened concern. And if that means, a few people who aren't problematic get turned down in order to make sure that the one person who is a problem also gets turned down, that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Government lawyers who called the MAVNI program an elevated security risk said that some recruits had provided false information to obtain student visas and that others had friends who were associated with foreign intelligence organizations. However, a 2017 report by the RAND Corporation found no evidence that MAVNI had caused any security problems. The report found that the program's recruits were generally better educated and performed better than the average enlisted soldier, and had not been involved in terrorism or espionage.
Well, the concerns were not legitimate. There were intelligence and security concerns, but those intelligence and security concerns weren't specific to the MAVNI program. They were concerns that affect all recruiting programs. And for whatever reason, I would say it's probably due to ignorance, the MAVNI program got singled out as some kind of special threat when it's not any kind of special threat. In fact, of all the recruiting programs the U.S. government has, this program was the least dangerous of all the programs. The officials felt that these national security concerns required them to shut down the program, and that's unfortunate because they haven't been able to get the valuable, talented immigrants that they were recruiting previously through the program. And now they're falling back on native-born American citizens and green card holders, and they've unfortunately lowered the standards for recruiting some of those folks, and that's led to problems within the ranks.
According to the Army, more than 2/3 of young adults do not qualify for military service because of poor physical fitness and other issues. In 2018, the U.S. Army missed its recruitment goal for the first time in more than a decade. The Army shortfall came as it sidelined more than 1,100 MAVNI recruits, many with graduate degrees and top-tier physical fitness scores. The following year, the Army announced that it met its target of 68,000 new soldiers for the 2019 fiscal year after implementing new outreach initiatives and marketing techniques. However, the Army also accepted more recruits who scored poorly on the Army aptitude exam and issued more waivers for drug use.
A country's people have to be willing to defend it. The idea that we have 1/3 of a billion people spanning a continent and can't find enough young people to fill our military ranks is preposterous. And giving in to this push to use immigration as a way of avoiding the other means of enticing Americans to join, whether it's better benefits, whether it's remedial phys ed programs. But the point is, that's the kind of thinking that the military needs, not some kind of workaround where, we'll import people from abroad who would be happy to serve in the military for free if they get a green card at the end of it. But that's socially pernicious. I mean, in the long run, the danger is appalling from that approach to staffing our military. And unfortunately, Margaret Stock and some other people have seen it as the kind of the first little step toward foreignizing the military, and that should never be allowed.
In 2018, the Army quietly began discharging MAVNI soldiers with little or no explanation. MAVNI soldiers brought several class action lawsuits against the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. These lawsuits have been highly successful, allowing approximately 1,900 MAVNIs to get naturalized.
It's unfortunate you have to sue the government for them to make good on the promise they made to you when they enlisted you in the Army. It's very unfortunate. As far as I know, right now there's no effort to reboot the program at all. In fact, they changed the law so that they can't have the program run the way it did in the past. Well, I was retired by the time all these decisions were made. I retired in 2010, so I really had no part in the decision making. In fact, I think part of the problem was that they didn't have any expertise on board to explain the program to them when they decided to shut it down, so they really didn't understand what they were doing when when they shut the program down. But I think it's unfortunate because a lot of the folks who came in through the program turned out to be extremely valuable, highly talented individuals, and those folks aren't coming into the military anymore.
MAVNI came to a standstill in the last months of the Obama administration. The Department of Defense extended the program for 1 year as background checks continued, but the Trump administration didn't renew the extension a year later. Now, the MAVNI program no longer exists, and hundreds of MAVNIs are still in limbo.